Meet Viola Desmond by Elizabeth Macleod and illustrated by Mike Deas. It was a cold, rainy day in November 1946. Viola Desmond needed to make a business trip. From her home in Halifax, she had to drive across Nova Scotia to Sydney. It would not be pleasant to drive on such a wet day, but when Viola made up her mind to do something, she did it. Viola had grown up in a big family with 10 brothers and sisters. Viola was one of the oldest. Her big sister Helen liked to bake. Viola would make the icing. Little sister Wanda helped her too. Viola's father had worked several jobs to support his family, including cutting hair. Maybe that is why Viola had decided to open a hair salon when she grew up. It had been tough for Viola to get started. She had to go to Montreal to attend beauty school. No school in Halifax would train her because she was black. When Viola came back home, she opened her own hair salon. Soon she had many customers. Viola's customers loved visiting her salon because she was smart, caring, and funny. Her customers were black women who weren't allowed to go to the salon in Halifax that white women used. Viola also made her own hair creams and face powder and started a beauty school to train other hairdressers. On the way to Sydney, Viola's car began making terrible noises. The town of New Glasgow was just ahead. Viola pulled off the road to find some help. Then Viola saw a movie theater nearby. She decided to watch a movie in New Glasgow while she waited for her car. It was a decision that would shape Canada's history. She walked into the theater main floor and sat down. It felt good to relax in a warm, dry place. Viola snuggled down into her seat. The movie was just about to begin. Suddenly, there was a tap on her shoulder. Viola had been given a ticket for the balcony. The usher told her to move. Viola didn't want to sit in the balcony. She went back to the ticket seller and asked again for a ticket on the main floor, even though it cost more. The ticket seller refused. She said nothing about the color of Viola's skin, but Viola knew that this is what she meant. That made Viola angry. When she went to the movies in Halifax, black people sat wherever they liked, just like white people. Viola marched back to the main floor and sat down. But Viola had hardly sat down before the usher came back. Then the manager came, but Viola stayed in her seat, because when she made up her mind to do something, she did it. A few minutes later, the manager was back with a police officer. Viola was driven to the jail and put in a cell. A police officer shut the door with a loud clang. Then she turned the key. Some people might have cried. Not Viola. She was bruised and upset, but she pulled on her white gloves. With her back straight, Viola sat down on the bed. She sat there all night long and didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, Viola was taken from her cell straight to a courtroom. The theater manager, ticket seller, usher, and a police officer were all there. Viola wasn't told that she could have a lawyer to help her, or more time to prepare. She didn't know she could ask a question. The judge found Viola guilty. She hadn't paid that 1 cent of tax. She was ordered to pay a fine of $26. That would be about $350 today. No one said anything about the color of Viola's skin, but everyone knew that this is what this case was really about. As Viola walked out of the courtroom, she was angry. Her car was fixed and waiting for her at the garage. But Viola was too upset to drive to Sydney. She headed home. Some of her friends said she should hire a lawyer and fight. They thought she could help change things for Black Canadians. Others said Viola should pretend the whole thing never happened. Evan, her husband, told her she should accept that Black people would always be treated badly. One of Viola's customers, Carrie Best, ran a newspaper called the Clarion. It was Nova Scotia's first newspaper that was owned by Black people. The Clarion ran articles about what had happened to Viola. More people started to say Viola had been treated unfairly. Viola decided to take her case to the top court in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NSAACP, agreed to help her. They collected money to pay for a lawyer. Many people, Black and white, gave money to help. Viola was worried about going to court again, but she was determined, and this time she wasn't alone. Her lawyer and Carrie Best were with her. But the judges at the top court would not hear Viola's case. They said she had waited too long to bring it to court. Again, no one talked about the color of Viola's skin, but everyone knew that this is what the case was still about. One of the judges even hinted that the case wasn't really about that 1 cent of a tax. He suggested it was about keeping Black people apart from white people. Viola knew she had been treated badly because she was Black. She hadn't won her court case, but the NSAACP kept working for justice. So did others, like Carrie Best and the Clarion. A few years later, Viola moved to Montreal, where she took a business course. Then Viola headed to New York City, where she worked finding jobs for singers and actors. Viola died there in 1965, but that is not the end of Viola's story. When Viola spent that night in jail, her little sister Wanda had been ashamed. But when Wanda was much older, she felt proud of Viola. Wanda was glad her sister had stood up for Black Canadians. Wanda began telling people Viola's story. She talked to children in school, she spoke at the universities, she gave interviews to reporters. When people heard what had happened to Viola, they said it was unfair. In 2010, Nova Scotia Premier Darrell Dexter apologized to Viola and all Black people in the province. A pardon had been granted for Viola. He said she was not guilty of any crime. He said she had not been treated fairly. Viola was the first Canadian ever to receive a pardon after she had died. When it was announced that Viola was going to be put on Canada's $10 bill, Wanda was so proud. Viola had wanted to make things better and more fair for Black Canadians, and she did. Because when Viola made up her mind to do something, she did it.